The gunshot echoed through the marble hallway as Zuri pressed herself against the wall, her heart hammering against her ribs. Through the crack in the door, she saw him, Kang Min-ho, Seoul's most feared mafia boss, his shirt unbuttoned, his hands tangled in another woman's hair as he kissed her with brutal possession. Then his eyes snapped to Zuri's, dark and dangerous and hungry, and something shifted in the air between them. Something that tasted like violence and devotion, and a future she never asked for. He straightened slowly, his gaze never leaving hers, and spoke 5 words that changed everything. "Remove your clothes and join us." Her response wasn't what anyone expected. "Welcome, besties. Please like, share, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from." Zuri's fingers trembled as she gripped the silver tray harder, the champagne glasses rattling against each other. She'd been working as a maid in the Kang estate for exactly 3 weeks, keeping her head down, saving everyone to send back home to Nigeria. She wasn't supposed to be in this wing of the mansion. She wasn't supposed to see anything. But the head housekeeper had sent her to deliver drinks to the boss's private study, and now she stood frozen in the doorway of hell itself. Min-ho's mistress, a beautiful Korean woman with perfect skin and designer lingerie, pulled away from him with a sultry laugh. Her eyes landed on Zuri with cold assessment. "Who is this?" she purred in Korean, her tone dripping with disdain. Min-ho's gaze hadn't moved from Zuri's face. He spoke in English, his accent thick and deliberate. "The new maid." He took a step toward her, buttoning his shirt with lazy confidence. "I asked you a question." Zuri's throat was so tight, she could barely breathe. She'd heard the stories about Kang Min-ho, how he'd built his empire on blood and fear, how men disappeared when they crossed him, how he owned half of Seoul's underground and the other half paid him tribute. She'd seen him exactly twice since she started working here, both times from a distance, both times feeling the weight of his presence like a physical thing. Up close, he was devastating. Tall, broad-shouldered, with sharp features that looked carved from stone and eyes that saw too much. A scar ran along his left jawline, barely visible, but somehow making him more dangerous, more real. "I don't participate in that," Zuri said, her voice steadier than she felt. She was proud of that. Proud that she didn't stammer or shake or run like every instinct screamed at her to do. "I'm here to work. That's all." The mistress laughed, a sharp, cruel sound. "Did you hear that, Min-ho? The African maid has standards." Min-ho raised one hand, a simple gesture, but the woman went silent immediately. His eyes never left Zuri's. "What's your name?" "Zuri." "Zuri," he repeated, testing the word on his tongue like he was tasting something rare. "You're not afraid of me." It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. "I'm terrified of you." Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe. Or respect. "But you're still standing here." "Because running would be worse." The corner of his mouth lifted, not quite a smile, but close. "Smart woman." He moved closer, and Zuri forced herself not to step back. He smelled like expensive cologne and danger. "You can go." She didn't need to be told twice. Zuri turned and walked away with as much dignity as she could manage, feeling his eyes on her back every step. She didn't run until she was 2 floors down, her heart trying to break through her chest. In the servants' quarters, she leaned against the wall and tried to remember how to breathe. Her roommate, Minji, looked up from her phone with wide eyes. "What happened? You look like you saw a ghost." "Worse," Zuri whispered. "I saw the boss." The next morning, Zuri woke to find an envelope on her pillow. Inside was more money than she made in 2 months and a note in sharp, precise handwriting. "For your discretion. And your courage." No signature. She knew exactly who it was from. For the next week, Zuri tried to make herself invisible. She took the assignments that kept her far from Min-ho's private wing. She avoided the main dining room when he took meals. She became a shadow, efficient and silent and utterly forgettable. Or so she thought. It was Minji who told her the truth, her voice hushed and urgent as they folded linens in the laundry room. "The boss has been asking about you." Zuri's hand stilled. "What?" "He wants to know everything. Where you're from, why you came to Korea, what you do on your days off." He's never done that before. never cared about any of the staff. Minji grabbed her arm. Zuri, you need to be careful. When powerful men like him become interested, it's never good for girls like us. But it was already too late for careful. That evening, as Zuri carried fresh towels to the guest wing, she found Minho waiting in the hallway. He leaned against the wall with casual elegance, but his eyes were sharp, calculating. You've been avoiding me. I've been working, Zuri corrected, keeping her voice neutral. She tried to move past him, but he shifted, blocking her path without touching her. Why did you come to Korea? The question was so unexpected that she answered honestly. To survive. To send money home to my family. To build something better than what I had. Noble, he said, and she couldn't tell if he was mocking her. And if I offered you something better than cleaning toilets and changing sheets? I'd ask what you wanted in return. His smile was slow, dangerous, beautiful. Maybe I just want to have dinner with someone who isn't afraid to tell me no. I told you no 3 days ago, Zuri reminded him. I remember. He pushed off the wall, moving into her space until she could feel the heat of his body. That's why I'm asking again. She should refuse. Every logical part of her brain screamed that getting involved with Kong Minho was a death sentence disguised as an opportunity. But there was something in his eyes that made her pause. Something lonely and hungry and almost vulnerable beneath all that power and danger. One dinner, she heard herself say, in the staff dining room, with other people around. His laugh was low and rich. You don't trust me. Should I? No. The honesty was startling. But I'll agree to your terms anyway. 2 days later, they sat across from each other at a corner table in the staff dining area, and Zuri felt every eye in the room watching them. Minho had kept his word. He didn't touch her, didn't make demands, didn't abuse his power. He just talked. He asked about Nigeria, about her family, about her dreams. And slowly, carefully, he revealed pieces of himself. How his father had built the Kong Empire on blood and fear. How Minho had taken over at 23 when his father was murdered by a rival family. How he'd spent the last 7 years consolidating power, eliminating threats, building something that looked like a legitimate business empire on the surface, but ran on very different rules underneath. Why are you telling me this? Zuri asked. Minho was quiet for a long moment, studying her face like he was trying to memorize it. Because you look at me like I'm human. Not a god. Not a monster. Just a man who made choices. Bad choices, she pointed out. The worst, he agreed. But they kept my people alive. They built this empire. They made me who I am. He leaned forward. I'm not asking you to forgive me or understand me. I'm just asking you to see me, and God help her, she did. Over the next 2 weeks, Minho found reasons to see her. He'd appear in whatever room she was cleaning, asking questions, telling stories, slowly dismantling every wall she tried to build between them. He sent gifts that she tried to return, a winter coat when he noticed her shivering, books in English about Korean culture, a phone that actually worked when hers died. He had her moved to a better room with an actual window and heating that worked. Small things. Constant things. Things that said, I'm paying attention and you matter to me without words. The other staff started treating her differently. Some with jealousy, some with fear, some with a knowing look that said she was playing a dangerous game. But it was Minho's inner circle that worried her most. His second-in-command, Yoojun Seo, watched her with open suspicion whenever she was near. His driver, Choi Tae-yoon, followed her on errands she didn't ask him to make. His lawyer, Lee Ji-hyun, asked too many questions about her visa status. They were protecting him. From her. On her day off, Zuri went to Seoul Tower with Minji, trying to remember what normal felt like. They took photos, ate street food, laughed at nothing in particular. For a few hours, she was just a young woman enjoying the city, not a maid caught in the gravity of a mafia boss who looked at her like she was something precious and dangerous all at once. She didn't see the car following them, didn't notice the men watching from a distance, didn't realize she'd become a target until it was too late. They grabbed her in the parking garage. 3 men with cold eyes and efficient hands, one covering her mouth before she could scream, another zip-tying her wrists. Minji ran, screaming for help. Zuri fought like hell, but they were trained and she wasn't. The last thing she saw before the hood went over her head was the Seoul skyline disappearing behind tinted windows. She lost track of time in the darkness. Could have been an hour. Could have been 3. When they finally pulled the hood off, she was in a warehouse that smelled like rust and old blood. A man sat in front of her, older, with silver hair and a smile that made her skin crawl. He spoke in Korean, and when she didn't respond, he switched to broken English. "You are Kang Min-ho's woman." "I'm his maid," Zuri corrected, trying to keep her voice from shaking. "Nothing more." "Liar." He stood, circling her chair. "He gave you gifts, moved your room, eats dinner with you like your equal." He grabbed her chin, forcing her to look at him. "He hasn't touched another woman since you arrived. That means something." Zuri's heart sank. She'd been so focused on what Min-ho meant to her that she hadn't considered what she might mean to him, or what his enemies would do with that information. "He doesn't care about me," she said. "I'm nobody. Then he won't mind if I kill you." The words were casual, conversational, like he was discussing the weather. "But I think he will mind. I think he'll mind very much. And when he comes for you, and he will come, I'll be ready." They locked her in a room that might have been an office once. No windows, one door, a single bulb hanging from the ceiling. Zuri's hands were still bound. Her phone was gone. No one knew where she was except the men who took her and Minji, who'd run. She hoped Minji had made it to safety. Hoped she'd told someone. Hoped Min-ho would care enough to look for her even though she was just a maid who'd caught his attention for a few weeks. Hours passed. Zuri drifted in and out of panic and forced calm, trying to think of a way out, coming up empty every time. Then she heard it. Gunshots. Shouting in Korean. The sounds of violence getting closer. The door exploded inward, the lock shattered by a single kick. Min-ho stood in the doorway like an avenging angel, his suit splattered with blood that wasn't his, a gun in his hand and murder in his eyes. Those eyes found her, scanned her for injuries, and something in his expression cracked. "Are you hurt?" His voice was rough, barely controlled. Zuri shook her head, not trusting herself to speak. He crossed the room in 3 strides, cutting the zip ties with a knife that appeared from nowhere. His hands were gentle as he checked her wrists for damage, but she could feel the rage vibrating through him. "How many?" she asked. "How many what? How many men did you kill to get to me?" Min-ho's eyes met hers, dark and honest and utterly without remorse. "All of them." He pulled her to her feet, keeping one hand on her waist as if afraid she'd disappear. "Can you walk?" "Yes." "Then stay close to me. Don't look at anything. Don't stop moving until we're in the car." He meant the bodies. She understood. They moved through the warehouse, and Zuri kept her eyes on Min-ho's back like he'd instructed. But she could smell the blood, feel the wrongness in the air, sense the death surrounding them. Yoo-jun SEO waited by a black SUV, his expression carefully neutral. "The boss. Dead," Min-ho said flatly. "His whole organization is getting the message tonight. No one touches what's mine." The drive back to the estate was silent. Min-ho kept his hand on her knee, his thumb moving in small circles like he needed the physical contact to believe she was real. When they arrived, he didn't take her to the servants' quarters. He took her to his private wing, to his own bedroom, closing the door behind them with a finality that made her pulse race. "You're staying here tonight," he said, and it wasn't a question. "Where I can see you. Where I know you're safe. Min-ho, they took you because of me." His voice broke on the words. "They were going to kill you to hurt me, because I couldn't stay away from you. Because I made you visible when you should have been invisible." He turned to face her, and she saw something raw and desperate in his eyes. "I should send you away. Put you on a plane back to Nigeria. Give you enough money to start over somewhere I can't ruin your life. Is that what you want?" Zuri asked quietly. "What I want doesn't matter." "It matters to me." She moved closer, her body making decisions her brain hadn't approved yet. "Tell me what you want, Min-ho." His control shattered. He crossed the distance between them and pulled her into his arms, his forehead pressed against hers, his breathing ragged. "I want to keep you. I want to lock you in this room where nothing can touch you. I want to burn down every organization in Seoul that even thinks about hurting you." His hands cupped her face. I want you to be mine in every way that matters, and I want to be yours in return. But I'm a selfish bastard who'll get you killed. Then be selfish, Zuri whispered. Choose me anyway. He kissed her like a man drowning, like she was air and salvation and damnation all at once. She tasted desperation and devotion and something darker, something possessive that should have scared her, but only made her hold him tighter. They moved together like a storm finding its center. Minho's hands mapped her curves with reverence and hunger, learning every dip and swell like he was memorizing sacred text. She pulled at his clothes, kneading skin, needing proof that he was real and solid in here. Tell me to stop, he breathed against her neck. Tell me this is too fast, too dangerous, too everything. Don't stop, she answered. Don't ever stop. He lifted her like she weighed nothing, carrying her to the bed with a gentleness that contrasted with the violence he'd committed to save her. When he laid her down, his eyes asked a question his mouth couldn't form. She answered by pulling him down to her. What happened next was theirs alone. The world outside ceased to exist. There was only sensation and emotion, tenderness and fire, two people finding each other in the darkness and choosing to hold on. When it was over, when they lay tangled together with their hearts still racing and their breathing synchronized, Minho pressed his lips to her forehead. You're mine now, he whispered in Korean, then repeated it in English, so she'd understand the weight of the words. And I'm yours. No going back. Zuri should have been terrified. Should have run. Should have seen the danger and the impossibility and the 100 ways this would end badly. Instead, she wrapped herself around him and whispered back, no going back. But fear was a patient hunter. In the morning, when dawn light filtered through the curtains and reality crept back in, Zuri woke to find Minho already dressed, standing by the window with his phone to his ear, speaking rapid Korean in the tone that meant business. The tone that reminded her exactly who he was. What he was. She slipped out of bed, gathering her clothes, trying to be quiet. But he noticed. Of course he noticed. He ended the call and turned to face her. Where are you going? Back to my room. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. I should get ready for work. You're not working today. Minho, you almost died yesterday. He crossed to her, his expression unreadable. You're taking the day off. The week off. However long you need. I need to work. I need the money. I'll pay you. I don't want your money. The words came out sharper than she intended. I don't want to be your kept woman. I don't want to be another thing you own. Something dangerous flickered in his eyes. Is that what you think last night was? Me buying you? Wasn't it? Zuri hated the words even as she said them, but the fear was stronger than logic now. Fear that she'd given herself to a man who collected people like possessions. Fear that she was just another conquest. Fear that when he got bored, she'd be discarded like his mistress had been. Get out. His voice was ice. What? You heard me. Get out before I say something we'll both regret. Zuri's hands shook as she finished dressing. She wanted to take the words back, to explain that she was scared and confused and didn't know how to be what he needed. But pride kept her silent. She walked to the door, and his voice stopped her. For the record, Minho said, not looking at her, I've never paid for someone's company. Never needed to. And I sure as hell didn't need to last night. He finally turned, and the hurt in his eyes was like a physical blow. You gave yourself to me freely. I gave myself to you the same way. If you can't see the difference, then maybe you're right. Maybe you should go. She left before the tears could fall. The next 3 days were torture. Zuri threw herself into work, taking every assignment that kept her busy and exhausted. She saw Minho exactly once, from a distance, and he looked through her like she didn't exist. The other staff whispered. They'd seen her leaving his room, seen his cold rage afterward, seen her exile herself back to invisibility. Minji tried to talk to her, but Zuri had no words to explain. How could she describe falling for a man in 3 weeks? How could she justify giving herself to someone so dangerous? How could she admit that she'd sabotaged the best thing in her life because she was too scared to believe it was real? On the 4th day, Minho's assistant delivered a message. The boss wanted to see her in his study. It wasn't a request. Zuri climbed the stairs to his private wing with her heart in her throat. She knocked, and his voice came through the door, cold and formal. Enter. Minho sat behind his desk, every inch the powerful businessman, his expression giving nothing away. He gestured to the chair across from him. Sit. She sat. You wanted to see me? I'm sending you back to Nigeria. The words hit like a physical blow.
What?
Your visa expires in 2 months. I'm arranging for you to leave early. Next week. All expenses paid, plus 6 months' salary as severance. His tone was professional, detached. You'll have enough to start over. Help your family. Build the life you wanted. Zuri couldn't breathe. You're firing me? I'm setting you free. Now he looked at her, and she saw the carefully controlled pain in his eyes. This world will kill you. If not my enemies, then me. I thought I could be selfish. I was wrong. What if I don't want to go? You do. You made that clear when you assumed I bought you. He stood, moving to the window. You were right to run. Right to protect yourself. I'm a monster who tried to dress up like a man for a few weeks. But monsters don't get happy endings. Minho, your flight is next Thursday. Mrs. Kim will help you pack. You'll receive your final payment tomorrow. His back was to her now, his shoulders rigid. You're dismissed. Zuri stood on shaking legs. She should argue. Should fight. Should tell him he was wrong about everything. But the words stuck in her throat. She left to study and didn't stop walking until she reached her room. Then she collapsed on her bed and let the tears come. The next 5 days passed in a fog. Zuri went through the motions of packing, of saying goodbye to the few friends she'd made, of pretending her heart wasn't breaking into smaller pieces with each passing hour. Minji helped her fold clothes, her expression sad and knowing. You're really leaving? I don't have a choice. You do, Minji said quietly. You could fight for him. Tell him how you really feel. He doesn't want me. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Minji grabbed her hands. The man killed 15 people to get you back. He's sending you away to protect you, not because he doesn't care. He cares so much it's destroying him. Zuri wanted to believe that, but fear was louder than hope. On Tuesday, 2 days before her scheduled flight, everything changed. Zuri was carrying her last box of belongings down to storage when she heard shouting in Korean from the main hall. She recognized Minho's voice, sharp with command, and another voice she didn't know. Curious and concerned, she moved closer. The scene that greeted her made her blood run cold. Minho stood in the center of the grand foyer, surrounded by 6 men with guns. Not his men. Strangers. At the front was a man in an expensive suit, older, with cold eyes and a smile that promised violence. He spoke in Korean, and though Zuri couldn't understand the words, she understood the threat. This was another rival, another enemy, another attempt on Minho's life. Yoo Jun-seo and Choi Tae-yoon flanked Minho, their hands hovering near concealed weapons. But they were outnumbered and outgunned. The tension was thick enough to choke on. Then the rival said something that made Minho's expression turn to stone. His eyes cut to Zuri, still visible in the doorway, and she saw fear flash across his face. Real, genuine fear. Not for himself. For her. The rival followed his gaze and smiled. He said something in Korean, and 2 of his men moved toward Zuri. She dropped the box and ran. Not away from Minho. Toward him. It was instinct, stupid and reckless, but she couldn't watch him die. Couldn't let him face this alone. Couldn't leave him. One of the men caught her arm, yanking her back. She fought, screaming, and then everything exploded into chaos. Minho moved like violence incarnate. He disarmed the nearest gunman with brutal efficiency, using the man's body as a shield as bullets started flying. Yoo Jun-seo and Choi Tae-yoon drew their weapons, and the foyer became a war zone. Zuri hit the ground as Minho had taught her in a conversation she'd thought was theoretical. Cover your head. Stay low. Don't move until someone you trust tells you it's safe. The gunfire seemed to last forever and no time at all. Then silence, broken only by heavy breathing and the sound of bodies hitting marble. Zuri. Minho's voice, rough and desperate. Zuri, talk to me. She looked up. He was kneeling beside her, blood on his face and shirt, his hands running over her frantically checking for wounds. "I'm okay," she managed. "I'm not hurt. You ran toward me." He sounded incredulous, angry, awed. "Bullets were flying and you ran toward me. I couldn't let them take you." "Take me?" He pulled her up, crushing her against his chest. "They were trying to take you. He said if I didn't surrender my territory, he'd kill you in front of me." Slowly. His hands were shaking. "And you ran toward me instead of away." "I couldn't leave you," Zuri whispered into his shoulder. "I can't leave you. I don't want to go to Nigeria. I don't want to be safe if it means being without you." Minho pulled back to look at her, his eyes blazing with emotion too big for words. "You're insane. I'm in love with you." The words fell out before she could stop them, honest and raw and terrifying. "I love you, Minho. I'm sorry I ran. I'm sorry I got scared. I'm sorry I made you think I saw you as a monster when you're the best man I've ever known." He kissed her like she was oxygen and he was drowning like she was salvation and he was damned like she was everything. Around them, his men discreetly turned away, giving them a moment of privacy in the aftermath of violence. When they finally broke apart, Minho pressed his forehead to hers. "You're not getting on that plane. No. No. You're staying here. With me. Forever if I have my way." He pulled back slightly, his expression fierce and tender all at once. "I love you. I've loved you since you stood in that doorway and told me no. Since you looked at me like I was human. Since you made me want to be better than the monster my father raised." "You're not a monster," Zuri said firmly. "You're a man who protects his people, who builds empires and keeps his word, who killed 15 men to save one maid because her life mattered to you." She cupped his face. "You're my monster. Mine." "Yours," he agreed. "Always yours." The cleanup took hours. The rival and his men were removed. The blood was scrubbed from marble. The bullet holes were noted for repair. Minho's doctor came to check both of them, pronouncing them miraculously uninjured despite the chaos. Through it all, Minho kept Zuri close, his hand on her back or his fingers threaded through hers, as if he needed constant physical proof she was real and safe and staying. That night, he brought her back to his bedroom. Not to his study, not to some neutral space. To his room. His territory. The place he'd first claimed her. "We need to talk," he said, his tone serious. "About what happens now." Zuri sat on the edge of his bed, suddenly nervous. "Okay. You can't be a maid anymore." He held up a hand before she could protest. "Not because I'm ashamed of you. Because every enemy I have now knows your face. They saw you run to me today. They saw me almost lose control trying to protect you. You're a target. So, what am I supposed to do? Hide?" "No." Minho knelt in front of her, taking her hands. "You stand beside me. Publicly. As my woman. My partner. The person I'm building this empire for." He brought her hands to his lips. "I know it's fast. I know it's dangerous. I know I'm asking you to give up any chance at a normal life. But I'm asking anyway. Stay with me. Choose this. Choose us." Zuri looked at him, this powerful, dangerous, beautiful man offering her everything with nothing but hope and devotion in his eyes. "I want conditions." His mouth twitched. "Name them." "1. I'm not useless. I'm going to work. Maybe not as a maid, but I need purpose. I need to contribute." "Agreed." "I need someone I trust to run the charitable foundation. It's legitimate, important work. The salary is substantial. If you're interested." 2. You don't hide your world from me. I know what you do. I know the risks. But I don't want to be protected by ignorance. I want the truth. Always. Agreed. His expression was serious. But some truths will be hard to hear. I can handle it. 3. She hesitated, then forced herself to continue. You don't make me a secret. I'm not hidden away. I'm not the woman you keep in the shadows because I'm not Korean. Because I don't fit into your world. If I'm yours, then you're mine, and everyone knows it. Minho's eyes blazed. I was hoping you'd demand that. I want the world to know you're mine. Want every man and soul to see you on my arm and know you're untouchable. He stood, pulling her up with him. Any other conditions? Just one. Zuri's voice softened. Love me. Even when I'm scared. Even when I push you away. Even when it's hard. Just keep loving me. That's not a condition. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. That's a promise I already made. I'll love you through fear and doubt and every hard thing that comes. I'll love you until loving you is the only thing I know how to do. He pulled her closer. Now let me add my conditions. You get conditions too? Fair is fair. His smile was tender.
1.
You wear my ring.
Soon.
I want you as my wife, legally and publicly. I want everyone to know you're Mrs. Kong Min-ho. Zuri's breath caught. You want to marry me? I want to marry you yesterday. I want to marry you tomorrow. But I'll settle for 3 months from now if that gives you time to be sure. I'm sure now. Then 1 month. Give me 1 month to court you properly, to show you the life we'll build together, to prove I can be the husband you deserve. Then marry me. What's your second condition? Zuri asked, her heart racing. You let me protect you. I know you're strong. I know you're capable. But when there's danger, when my enemies come, you trust me to keep you safe. No running toward bullets. No sacrificing yourself for me. You stay alive because I can survive anything except losing you. His voice cracked on the last words. Promise me. I promise. She sealed it with a kiss. Third condition? There is no third condition. Min-ho lifted her into his arms, carrying her to the bed. The first 2 were the only ones that matter. Everything else we'll figure out together. That night, they made love like people who'd found each other in the darkness and refused to let go. Slow and tender and consuming. Every touch was a promise. Every kiss was a vow. Every moment was theirs. When morning came, Min-ho was still there, wrapped around her like he was afraid she'd disappear. Good morning, future Mrs. Kong, he murmured against her hair. Good morning, future Mr. Zuri, she teased back. He laughed, the sound rich and unguarded. That's not how it works. I know, but I like making you laugh. You make me do a lot of things I never thought I'd do. He propped himself up on one elbow, looking down at her with such open adoration it made her chest tight. You make me soft, human, happy. Is that a bad thing? It's everything. The next month was a whirlwind. Min-ho kept his word. He courted her properly, with dates that ranged from elegant dinners at Seoul's finest restaurants to street food in markets, where he was just another face in the crowd. He introduced her to his inner circle officially. Yoo Jun-seo became a protective older brother figure, teaching her basic self-defense and Korean phrases. Choi Tae-yoon drove her to language classes Min-ho insisted she take, not because she had to, but because she wanted to understand his world better. Lee Ji-hyun helped her navigate the legal requirements for marriage, her initial suspicion melting into respect when she saw how seriously Zuri took the commitment. Min-ho's aunt, the only family he had left, flew in from Busan to meet her. The woman was intimidating, elegant, and sharp as a blade. She spoke to Zuri in Korean for 5 minutes before switching to perfect English. I wanted to see if you'd pretend to understand or admit you're still learning. You admitted. Good. My nephew needs someone honest. She studied Zuri with shrewd eyes. You love him more than anything. Good. Because this life will try to break you. Money and power attract vultures. You'll face racism, jealousy, danger. Women will throw themselves at him to test your bond. Men will threaten you to hurt him.
Can you survive that?
Zuri met her gaze steadily. I already have. The aunt smiled. Then welcome to the family, Zuri. Make him happy. Make him better. That's all I ask. The foundation work was fulfilling in ways Zuri hadn't expected. She worked with orphanages, women's shelters, immigrant support services. She saw the good Min-ho's money could do when directed properly. She met people whose lives had been changed by the Kong family's generosity. It wasn't redemption for the darker side of his empire, but it was balance. Light to offset the shadow. And slowly, carefully, Min-ho began showing her that shadow. Not to scare her, but to trust her. He explained how his organization worked. the protection they offered to businesses, the territory disputes they mediated, the violence they prevented through reputation alone. He didn't glorify it or apologize for it. He just showed her the truth. Some of what I do is evil, he admitted one night as they sat on his balcony overlooking Seoul. I've hurt people who deserved it and some who probably didn't. I've made choices I can't take back. I won't lie and say it's all justified or necessary. But, Zuri prompted, but I've also built something that keeps thousands of people employed and safe. My territory has the lowest crime rate in Seoul because everyone knows I handle problems swiftly. The businesses under my protection thrive because no one dares touch them. I'm not a hero, but I'm not a villain either. I'm just a man trying to control chaos. He looked at her. Can you live with that? I already am, Zuri said simply. I see all of you, Minho. The darkness and the light. And I love all of it. All of you. 3 weeks into their engagement, the next threat came. Not with guns or violence, but with something more insidious. Rumors. They started small. Whispers in the Korean community. Zuri was a gold digger. A foreigner using Minho for money and status. She'd seduced him away from proper Korean women who understood his culture. She was pregnant and trapping him. She was a spy for rival organizations. The rumors multiplied, growing more vicious with each retelling. Someone leaked photos of her with doctored timestamps, making it look like she'd been with other men while dating Minho. Someone started a social media campaign calling for Minho to remember his heritage and stop disrespecting his ancestors. The Korean community was divided.
Some supported them.
Others were openly hostile. Zuri faced it every time she left the estate. Stares. Whispers. One woman spat at her feet in a market. Another called her a whore in Korean loud enough for everyone to hear. Minho was furious. He wanted to destroy everyone spreading rumors, to make examples of them, to use his power to crush the opposition. But Zuri stopped him. That'll just prove them right, she said calmly, though her hands shook with suppressed emotion. That I'm some manipulative foreigner who has you under a spell. We need to be smarter.
How?
By being us.
Publicly.
Undeniably. Let them see that what we have is real. That I'm not using you, and you're not ashamed of me. Let them see love, not scandal. So they did. Minho took her to the most visible charity gala of the season, and when reporters asked about the rumors, he addressed them directly. Zuri is the woman I love and the woman I'm marrying. Anyone who has a problem with that is welcome to discuss it with me personally. I promise the conversation will be brief and memorable. He pulled Zuri close, his hand possessive on her waist. She's brilliant, kind, and stronger than anyone who's tried to break her. I'm the lucky one here. And if Seoul society can't see that, then Seoul society is blind. The video went viral, not just in Korea, but internationally. An interracial couple, a powerful man defending his woman, a love story that defied cultural expectations. The response was overwhelming. Some negative, but more positive than Zuri had dared hope. Young people especially rallied to their side. Interracial couples throughout Seoul reached out with support. International media painted them as a modern romance breaking down barriers. The tide began to turn. Slowly, then faster. The same society that had whispered started to embrace them. Or at least stopped openly attacking them. It wasn't perfect. Some people would never approve. But it was enough. 2 days before the wedding, Zuri's family arrived from Nigeria. Her mother, her 2 younger sisters, her cousin who'd helped raise her. Minho had flown them in first class, put them up in a luxury hotel, and arranged for translators to help them navigate Seoul. Watching her mother meet Minho was terrifying. The woman was tiny but fierce, and she looked at him with the skepticism of someone who'd seen too many men make promises they couldn't keep. She spoke in Igbo, and Zuri translated. My mother wants to know if you're going to be good to me. If you're going to respect me and treat me as an equal, not property. Minho looked Zuri's mother in the eye and spoke slowly, carefully. I promise to love your daughter with everything I am. To protect her, but not control her. To build a life with her, not for her. To honor her strength and support her dreams. And if I ever break those promises, you have my permission to come to Seoul and destroy me yourself. Zuri translated. Her mother stared at him for a long moment, then smiled. He'll do, she said in English, surprising them both. Just make sure he knows I'm watching. The wedding was intimate by Seoul standards. Only 200 guests, split between Minho's organization and Zuri's family and friends. The ceremony blended traditions. Korean bows and Nigerian prayers. Vows in English and Korean. A celebration that honored both their cultures. When Minho slid the ring onto Zuri's finger, his hand shook. When she did the same to him, tears slipped down her cheeks. I love you, he said in Korean, then repeated in English. You're mine forever now. Forever, Zuri agreed. No takebacks. Never. The reception was beautiful chaos. Dancing and food and toasts that made everyone laugh or cry or both. Yoo Jun-seo's toast was particularly moving. I've known Minho since we were kids. I've seen him build an empire, survive assassination attempts, and make impossible choices. But I've never seen him happy until Zuri. She didn't just capture his heart. She gave him a reason to have one. The night ended with Minho carrying Zuri over the threshold of the penthouse they'd be living in. Not the estate. Their own space. Welcome home, Mrs. Kong, he murmured. Welcome home, husband, she replied. That night, they loved each other with the desperation of people who'd almost lost everything and the tenderness of people who knew exactly what they had. When it was over, when they lay tangled together in the darkness, Minho's hand rested on her stomach. I want a family with you, he said quietly. Children who grow up knowing they're loved, who never have to be afraid, who see their mother as the strongest woman in the world and their father as the man who'd burn down empires to keep them safe. That sounds perfect, Zuri whispered. Huh? How many children? As many as you'll give me. That's a dangerous promise. I'm a dangerous man. He kissed her. But only to my enemies. To you, I'm just yours. 3 months later, Zuri stood in the bathroom of their penthouse, staring at a pregnancy test with 2 pink lines. Joy and terror warred in her chest. This was everything they'd talked about, but it was also sudden and overwhelming and real. Minho found her there, took one look at the test, and fell to his knees. His arms wrapped around her waist, his face pressed against her stomach, and he started crying. Not sad tears. Happy ones. We're having a baby, he said in wonder. You're giving me a family. A real family. We're building it together, Zuri corrected, running her fingers through his hair. You and me. Always us. Always us, he agreed. The pregnancy was challenging. Morning sickness that lasted all day. Exhaustion that made her sleep 14 hours. Cravings for Nigerian food that Minho learned to cook himself when restaurants couldn't get it right. But Minho was there through all of it, holding her hair when she got sick, carrying her to bed when she fell asleep on the couch, learning to make jollof rice and egusi soup from video tutorials. He attended every doctor's appointment, asked a million questions, and cried when they heard the heartbeat for the first time. When they found out they were having a girl, Minho's expression was pure wonder. A daughter, he breathed. A little girl who's going to look like you and have your strength and probably terrify me from the moment she's born. She'll have your stubborn streak, Zuri teased. She'll have everything good from both of us, Minho corrected. And none of the bad. The danger came in her 7th month. Not from rivals or enemies, but from complications. Preeclampsia, high blood pressure, the threat of early labor. The doctors put her on bed rest. Minho became a man possessed. He had the best specialists in Seoul on call. He converted their bedroom into a medical suite. He worked from home, never more than a room away. And when her blood pressure spiked dangerously high, when the doctor said they needed to deliver early, he held her hand and promised her everything would be okay. Stay with me, he whispered as they wheeled her to surgery. You and our daughter both stay with me. That's an order. Bossy, even in the delivery room. Zuri managed through her fear. Always. The emergency C-section was terrifying. But when they placed their daughter in Zuri's arms, tiny and perfect and screaming with healthy lungs, nothing else mattered. Minho stood beside them, tears streaming down his face, looking at his wife and daughter like they were miracles he didn't deserve but would worship anyway. She's perfect, he said. Like her mother. They named her Amara. It meant grace in Igbo and immortal in Korean. A name that honored both her heritages. A name that represented hope and love and the impossible future they'd built together. Recovery was slow. Zuri's body had been through trauma. But Minho was there every step, changing diapers at 3 a.m, pacing the hallway with a crying baby so Zuri could sleep, learning to breastfeed, support, and swaddle and soothe. He was a natural father, patient and gentle and completely devoted. "I never thought I'd have this," he admitted one night as he rocked Amara to sleep. "A wife I love. A daughter who's perfect. A family that's mine to protect instead of an organization to manage. You gave me this, Zuri. You gave me everything." "We gave each other everything," Zuri corrected. 6 months after Amara's birth, Minho made an announcement that shocked his entire organization. He was stepping back. Not completely, but significantly. He was promoting Yoo Jun Seo to handle day-to-day operations. He was legitimizing more of the business. He was choosing to be a present father and husband over being the most feared man in Seoul. "I've built enough empires," he told Zuri. "Now I want to build a life. With you. With Amara. With whatever other children we have. I want to be there for bedtimes and first steps and all the moments I'd miss if I kept prioritizing power over family." "Are you sure?" Zuri asked. "Your organization will be fine."
Better, probably.
"I've spent years being feared. Maybe it's time to try being loved instead." He pulled her close. "You taught me that. You and Amara. That love is stronger than fear. That building something good is more important than controlling something powerful." The transition wasn't easy. Some of his organization resisted. Some rivals saw it as weakness. There were challenges and threats and moments where Minho had to prove he was still dangerous when necessary. But he handled it all while being home for dinner, while reading bedtime stories, while being present. A year after Amara's birth, Zuri stood in their penthouse and marveled at the life they'd built. Amara was walking now, toddling around with fearless confidence. The foundation was thriving under Zuri's leadership. Minho had successfully transitioned to a less hands-on role without losing power or respect. They were happy. Genuinely, impossibly happy. "Do you ever regret it?" Minho asked one evening as they watched Amara play. "Saying yes to me? Staying when you should have run." Zuri looked at him, this man who'd started as her boss and become her entire world. "Not for a single second. Even when it was hard. Even when people hated us. Even when you almost died giving me our daughter? Especially then." She took his hand. "Because those were the moments that proved what we have is real. That we chose each other through everything. That love isn't just the easy moments, but the impossible ones too." Minho pulled her into his arms, careful not to disturb Amara's play. "I love you more every day. I didn't think that was possible, but you keep proving me wrong. That's my special talent. One of many." He kissed her softly. "Thank you for not running that first day. Thank you for being brave enough to stay. Thank you for giving me a life worth living." "Thank you for seeing me," Zuri replied. "For choosing me. For loving me through every scared, messy, complicated moment." They stood there, wrapped around each other, watching their daughter play. Outside, Seoul sparkled with lights. Inside, they had everything that mattered. It had started with an impossible command and an unexpected response. It had grown through danger and devotion, fear and faith, darkness and determined love. And it had become something neither of them could have imagined. A family, a future, a happily ever after earned through blood and tears and refusing to give up. "We should have another baby," Minho said suddenly. Zuri laughed. "Amara is 1 year old. I know. But I want a big family. I want this house full of children who grow up knowing they're loved, who see their parents still crazy about each other after decades, who know that love can survive anything." "You're insane. You married me anyway." "Yes," Zuri agreed, turning to kiss him properly. "I did. And I'd do it again. Every single time." And she would. Because some love stories start with danger and demand. Some begin with fear and defiance. Some are written in the darkness and emerge into light. Theirs had all of that. And it was perfect. 3 years later, they stood in the same penthouse with 3 children. Amara at 4, confident and bilingual. Their son Chitty at 2, named for Zuri's late father. And baby Neri, 3 months old, named for Minho's mother. The house was chaos and noise and love. Minho had fully transitioned to legitimate business, though his reputation still protected his family. Zuri's foundation had expanded internationally. They'd built something good from the darkness. They'd both survived. One evening, after the children were asleep, Minho found Zuri on the balcony. "Remember when you stood in my doorway and I gave you an impossible order?" "How could I forget? What would you say if I gave it now?" Zuri looked at him, this man who'd become her everything. "I'd say I already joined you. Every part of me. Every day. Forever." "Good answer." He pulled her close. "Because you're stuck with me, Mrs. Kong. No escape." "I don't want to escape." She rested her head on his chest, hearing his heartbeat, steady and strong. "I want to stay right here. With you. Building this beautiful, impossible life. One day at a time." And they did. Through challenges and changes, through years that turned to decades, through every impossible thing that came their way. They stayed. They loved. They built something that started in darkness and bloomed into light. Because sometimes the most impossible commands lead to the most beautiful responses. And sometimes refusing to run is the bravest thing you can do. 5 years had passed since that fateful night when Zuri stood in Minho's doorway and changed both their lives forever. Now she stood in the grand ballroom of the Kong Foundation headquarters, watching as Seoul's elite gathered for their annual charity gala. The woman she'd become was worlds away from the frightened maid who'd once scrubbed floors in this very building. Tonight, she wore a custom gown that celebrated both her cultures, deep emerald silk with Nigerian attire patterns embroidered in gold thread. Her natural hair was styled in an elegant updo, and the diamonds at her throat were a gift from Minho for their 5th anniversary. She looked like royalty. More importantly, she felt like herself. "You're staring," Minho murmured, appearing at her side with 2 glasses of champagne. He looked devastating in his tailored tuxedo, his hair swept back, that scar on his jaw visible and somehow making him more distinguished with age. "I'm remembering," Zuri corrected, accepting the glass. 5 years ago, I was terrified of you. You should have been. I was dangerous. You still are." She smiled up at him. "You're just dangerous in different ways now. Like how you convinced me to have 3 children when I said I wanted 2. Neri was a surprise we both agreed to. After you gave me those eyes and told me you wanted one more baby to complete our family." Minho's laugh was warm and unguarded. "Guilty. But look at how perfect our family is. Can you really complain?" She couldn't. Their life was chaotic and beautiful, and everything she'd never known she wanted. Amara was 7 now, attending an international school where she excelled in both Korean and English. She had her father's stubborn determination and her mother's fierce heart. Chitty was 5, gentle and thoughtful, always asking questions about everything. And Neri was 3, a tiny whirlwind of energy who had both her parents wrapped around her little finger. "Mommy, Daddy." Amara's voice cut through the elegant crowd. She ran toward them in her own formal dress, her face flushed with excitement. "Grandma says the performance is about to start." Zuri's mother had moved to Seoul 2 years ago, claiming she wanted to be close to her grandchildren. Really, she'd fallen in love with the city and the life her daughter had built. She'd become an integral part of the foundation, working with immigrant women to help them navigate Korean society. "Then we better get to our seats," Minho said, scooping Amara up despite her protests that she was too big to be carried. "Can't miss your grandmother's big moment." The performance was a cultural showcase celebrating Korean-Nigerian fusion. It was Zuri's mother's idea, a way to show that different worlds could blend into something beautiful. As Zuri watched dancers move to rhythms that merged both cultures, she felt Minho's hand find hers. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For this. For everything. For not running that day. For staying. For building this life with me." His thumb traced circles on her palm. "For making me believe in happy endings." "We earned this ending," Zuri said softly. "Through everything we survived." After the performance, As guests mingled and donated generously to the foundation, a young woman approached Zuri. She was Korean, early 20s, and her eyes held a mixture of hope and nervousness. Mrs. Kong? I'm sorry to interrupt, but I had to tell you something. She spoke quickly, as if afraid she'd lose her courage. My boyfriend is from Ghana. My family doesn't approve. They say it's wrong, that I'm betraying my culture. But I saw you and Mr. Kong, and I thought, maybe it's possible. Maybe love can be enough. Zuri felt her heart clench. She remembered being that scared, being that uncertain. Love is enough, she said firmly. But it won't be easy. People will judge you. They'll say terrible things. You'll face challenges you never imagined. The young woman's face fell. So, I should give up? I didn't say that. Zuri took her hands. I said it won't be easy. But nothing worth having ever is. If you love him, if he loves you, if you're both willing to fight for each other through everything, then yes, it's possible. More than possible. It's worth it. How did you do it? How did you make it work? We chose each other every single day. Zuri glanced at Minho across the room, catching his eye. He smiled, and even after 5 years, it made her stomach flutter. Even on the hard days. Especially on the hard days. We chose us over fear. Over doubt. Over everything that tried to break us apart. The young woman left with tears in her eyes and hope on her face. Minho appeared at Zuri's side, sliding his arm around her waist. Making a difference, one couple at a time? Trying to. She leaned into him. Do you ever think about how different things could have been? If I'd run that day? If you'd let me go to Nigeria? Every day. His voice went serious. And every day, I'm grateful you stayed. Grateful I was selfish enough to fight for you. Best selfish decision you ever made? The only one that mattered. Later that night, after the gala ended and they'd returned home, Zuri found Minho in the nursery. Neri had woken from a nightmare, and he was rocking her back to sleep, singing softly in Korean. The sight of this powerful man, once Seoul's most feared boss, now cradling their daughter with infinite tenderness, never failed to move her. She's out, Minho whispered, carefully laying Neri back in her bed. They stood together in the doorway, watching their daughter sleep. Down the hall, Amara and Chitty were already deep in dreams of their own. 3 perfect children, Zuri murmured. How did we get so lucky? Luck had nothing to do with it. Minho pulled her close. We fought for this, bled for this, built this from nothing but stubbornness and love. In their bedroom, as they prepared for bed, Minho stopped Zuri with a hand on her wrist. I have something for you. It's not our anniversary. It's not my birthday. I don't need a reason to give my wife gifts. He pulled out a small box and Zuri's breath caught. Before you panic, it's not another ring. Open it. Inside was a key. Not just any key, it was clearly old, ornate, significant. What is this? The key to my father's estate in Busan. Minho's expression was vulnerable. I've been renovating it, turning it from a monument to his violence into something good. A retreat center for families. A place of healing instead of hurt. He closed her fingers around the key. I want you to run it. Use your foundation experience. Make it everything his legacy wasn't. Kind, welcoming, safe. Zuri felt tears burn her eyes. You're giving me your father's estate? I'm giving us a new beginning. Again. Because that's what we do. We take broken things and make them beautiful. She kissed him, pouring 5 years of love and gratitude into it. When they broke apart, both breathless, Minho rested his forehead against hers. I love you more now than I did 5 years ago. More than yesterday. And tomorrow, I'll love you more than today. That's exponential growth, Zuri teased through her tears. Eventually you'll explode from loving me too much. What a way to go. They made love that night with the ease of longtime partners who still found wonder in each other. Every touch was familiar and new. Every kiss held years of history and the promise of years to come. Afterward, wrapped in each other's arms, Minho spoke into the darkness. Do you remember what you said that day? When I gave you that impossible order? I said a lot of things. Most of them probably shouldn't be repeated. He chuckled. You said you didn't participate in that. That you were there to work. I was terrified. You were magnificent. His hand traced lazy patterns on her back. You looked at me like I was just a man. Not a god. Not a monster. Just a man who needed to be told no. Did you fall in love with me then? I fell in fascination. Love came later. When you ran to me instead of away. When you chose danger with me over safety without me. He kissed her forehead. When you kept choosing me, even when I gave you every reason not to. You gave me more reasons to stay than to leave. Did I? Or did you just see the good I was trying to be instead of the bad I was? Both, Zuri said honestly. I saw all of you. I chose all of you. A month later, they took the children to Busan for the grand opening of the Kong Family Healing Center. The estate had been transformed from a cold monument to warmth and welcome. The walls that had witnessed violence now echoed with laughter. The rooms that had held fear now offered sanctuary. Zuri's mother had helped design the programs, support groups for immigrant families, cultural exchange workshops, trauma counseling, educational opportunities. It was everything Minho's father's empire hadn't been. Your father would hate this, Yoo Jun-seo observed, standing beside Minho as they watched families explore the grounds. Good, Minho said simply. His legacy was fear. Mine will be different. Because of her. Jun-seo nodded toward Zuri, who was kneeling beside a young girl, helping her plant flowers in the garden. Because of her, Minho agreed. She made me want to be better, and then she loved me enough that I actually became it. That evening, as the sun set over Busan, the family gathered on the estate's terrace. Amara chased Chitty through the gardens while Mary toddled after them, her laughter carrying on the breeze. Zuri's mother sat with Minho's aunt, the two older women having formed an unlikely but strong friendship. Minho pulled Zuri aside, leading her to a quiet corner of the terrace. I want to tell you something I've never told anyone. That sounds ominous. It's not. It's just true. He took her hands. That day, when you stood in my doorway, I saw something in your eyes.
Strength.
Defiance. Life. I'd been dead inside for so long that I'd forgotten what it felt like to want something I couldn't buy or command or take by force. What did you want? You to see me.
The real me.
Not my power or my reputation or my wealth. Just me. His voice cracked slightly. And you did. From that first moment, you saw me. And it terrified me because I knew you were going to change everything. Did I? You saved me, Zuri. Not from my enemies. Not from danger. From myself. From becoming exactly like my father. From a life where power mattered more than love. He cupped her face. You gave me a reason to be good. To choose mercy over vengeance. To build instead of destroy. You gave me the same thing, Zuri said. A reason to stay. To fight. To believe I deserved more than surviving. You taught me I could thrive. We saved each other then. We did. And we keep saving each other. Every day. Their children's laughter pulled them back to the present. Amara had organized some sort of game that involved all the kids at the center, and chaos reigned beautifully. That's your daughter, Minho observed. Natural leader. Fearless. That's your daughter, Zuri corrected. Stubborn. Determined to get her way. So she's both of us. All three of them are. They rejoined the family, and as evening fell, someone started music. Korean drums mixed with African rhythms, just like at their wedding. Just like in their life. Two worlds blending into something unique and beautiful. Minho pulled Zuri into a dance, right there on the terrace, with their children and family watching. I'm not good at this, he protested as she tried to teach him the steps. You're terrible at it, Zuri agreed, laughing as he stepped on her foot. But you're trying. That's what matters. Story of our relationship. What, you being terrible and trying anyway? Me being completely out of my depth and doing it anyway, because you're worth it. 7 years after that first encounter, Zuri stood in the renovated estate and marveled at how far they'd come. The scared maid and the dangerous boss had become partners, lovers, parents, philanthropists. They'd built an empire of a different kind, one based on love and family and genuine good. The foundation had expanded to 3 countries. The healing center was thriving. Minho's organization was now completely legitimate, though his reputation still commanded respect. They'd proven that change was possible, that redemption was real, that love could transform even the most unlikely people. But it wasn't always perfect. They still fought, still struggled, still had days where their different backgrounds clashed or their strong personalities collided. One particularly difficult evening, after an argument about Amara's education, Minho wanted the most prestigious private school. Zuri wanted her in a more diverse environment. They found themselves on opposite sides of their bedroom, both too stubborn to apologize first. "This is ridiculous," Zuri finally said. "We're acting like children. You're the one being unreasonable." "I'm being unreasonable? You want to send our 7-year-old to a school where she'll be the only black student. I want her to have the best education possible." "The best education isn't always the most expensive one." They glared at each other across the room. Then Minho started laughing. "What's funny?"
Us. This.
"The fact that we're fighting about which elite school to send our daughter to when 7 years ago you were cleaning my floors and I was ordering you to—" He trailed off, shaking his head. "How did we get here?" "You mean how did we go from that to this?" "Yeah." Zuri moved closer. "We chose each other. Over and over. Even when it was hard. Even when we wanted to throttle each other." She took his hands. "We're going to keep choosing each other. Through every fight. Every disagreement. Every moment where our stubbornness collides. Even when I'm being an overprotective nightmare about our children's futures. Even then. Though we are not sending her to that school." Minho groaned.
Fine.
"But I get final say on Chitty's school. We'll discuss it.
Equally.
Like partners. You're going to win that one too, aren't you?" "Probably." He pulled her into his arms. "I love you. Even when you're infuriatingly right about everything. I love you too. Even when you're being a stubborn, overprotective Korean man who thinks money solves everything. It solves most things. It doesn't solve this." She kissed him. "Only we can solve this. Together." By their 10th anniversary, the Kong family had become something of a legend in Seoul. The interracial couple who defied expectations. The Mafia boss who'd chosen love over power. The Nigerian woman who'd built an international foundation. The family that proved different worlds could blend beautifully. For their anniversary, Minho surprised Zuri with a trip back to Nigeria. Not just the two of them, the whole family. He wanted their children to know their mother's homeland, to understand both halves of their heritage. Standing in her childhood village, introducing her children to relatives they'd only seen on video calls, Zuri felt something complete inside her. She'd left Nigeria as a desperate young woman seeking survival. She returned as a wife, mother, philanthropist, someone who'd built a life beyond her wildest dreams. "Your daughter's stories are true," an elder told Minho in halting English. "When she left, we thought she'd forget us. But she sends money, builds schools, supports the women. She remembers where she came from. She never forgot," Minho said. "She carried all of you with her. Your strength, your resilience, your spirit. She's the woman she is because of this place." The elder studied him. "And you? The Korean man who married our daughter? You treat her well?" "I try to deserve her every day," Minho answered honestly. "Most days I fail, but I keep trying." The elder smiled. "That is all a woman can ask. A man who keeps trying, who keeps choosing her." That night, in the modest hotel room in Lagos, with their children sleeping peacefully, Zuri curled into Minho's arms. "Thank you for this. For bringing them here. For making sure they know both sides of who they are." "They're lucky," Minho said. "They get the best of both worlds. Your strength and warmth. My stubbornness and protection. Nigerian hospitality and Korean discipline. You make it sound so neat and organized. It's messy and complicated and perfect. Like us." "Like us," Zuri agreed. 15 years after that fateful night, Zuri received a call that changed everything again. A young woman named Blessing had reached out to the foundation. She was Nigerian, working as a maid in Seoul, and she'd found herself in an impossible situation. Her employer, a wealthy businessman, had developed an unhealthy obsession with her. She was scared, alone, and didn't know where to turn. Zuri met with Blessing in the Foundation's private offices. The girl couldn't have been more than 22, and the fear in her eyes was intimately familiar. "Tell me everything," Zuri said gently. The story poured out. The inappropriate comments. The unwanted touches. The feeling of being trapped between needing the job and protecting herself. The isolation of being foreign and alone. "I don't know what to do," Blessing whispered. "I can't go to the police. My visa is sponsored by him. If I quit, I get deported. If I stay..." She started crying. "I know what you're thinking, that I should just leave. But it's not that simple." "I know," Zuri said, her heart aching. "I know exactly how complicated it is." She told Blessing her own story. Not all of it, some parts were too private, but enough. About being a maid. About being powerless. About the moment everything changed. "You became Mrs. Kong?" Blessing's eyes were wide. "The Mrs. Kong? Everyone knows your story. But they say it's a fairy tale. That it didn't really happen that way." It wasn't a fairy tale. It was terrifying and messy and dangerous. But it was real. Zuri leaned forward. "Here's what I'm going to do. The foundation will help you. We'll find you a new job with a family I trust. We'll transfer your visa sponsorship. We'll make sure you're safe. And if your current employer tries anything, he'll deal with my husband." "Your husband?" "Trust me, he's very good at making men understand when they've crossed a line." 2 days later, Blessing was safely relocated. Her former employer received a visit from Minho and Yoojun Seo that left him pale and shaking. No violence was necessary. Just a very clear conversation about consequences. "You can't save every woman in Seoul," Minho told Zuri that night. "I can try." "I know. It's one of the things I love about you." He pulled her close. "Your heart is too big for one person. It needs to hold the whole world." "Not the whole world. Just the women who remind me of who I was. Who need someone to see them. Like I saw you. Like we saw each other." 20 years after that first encounter, the Kong family had grown in ways neither Minho nor Zuri could have imagined. Amara was in university, studying international law with plans to work in human rights. She was fierce and brilliant and terrifyingly competent. She'd inherited her father's strategic mind and her mother's compassionate heart, and she was going to change the world. Chidi was in high school, gentle and artistic, planning to study architecture. He wanted to design buildings that brought communities together, that honored different cultures, that made people feel safe. He'd inherited his mother's warmth and his father's determination. Neri was in middle school, a whirlwind of energy and emotion, who couldn't decide if she wanted to be a doctor or a dancer. She'd inherited the best and worst of both parents, stubborn, passionate, loving, and absolutely impossible to control. And then there was the surprise. The baby they hadn't planned for. The one that came when Zuri was 42 and Minho was 45, when they thought their family was complete. They named him Ezekiel, a name that meant God strengthens in Hebrew, a bridge between all the faiths and cultures their family embodied. "For children," Minho said, holding his newborn son with the same wonder he'd had with each of their babies. "We said 2. We ended up with 4. "You're very persuasive," Zuri said from the hospital bed, exhausted and glowing. "You're very easy to persuade when I use those eyes." "What eyes?" He demonstrated, the soft, vulnerable look that still made her melt after 20 years. "Those are lethal and should be illegal. But they got us, Ezekiel. So you're welcome." Their older children crowded into the hospital room, wanting to meet their brother. Amara held him with competent care, already the protective big sister. Chidi sketched him, capturing the moment. Neri declared him, wrinkly but cute, and immediately started planning his future. This was their family, messy and loud and full of different personalities and perspectives. Perfect. 25 years after that fateful night, Zuri stood at the podium of Seoul's largest convention center. She was being honored with a humanitarian award for her foundation's work. The room was filled with dignitaries, celebrities, business leaders, people who'd once whispered about the inappropriate relationship between a mafia boss and his maid. Now they stood and applauded. Minho sat in the front row, looking at her with the same intensity he'd had that first day. 25 years, and he still looked at her like she was everything. When I came to Korea, Zuri began, her Korean now fluent and unaccented, I was invisible. Just another immigrant worker trying to survive. I cleaned floors in buildings like this. I kept my head down. I made myself small. She paused, finding Minho's eyes. And then someone saw me.
Really saw me.
Not as a maid or a foreigner or a conquest. As a person. As someone with value beyond what I could do for them. That person taught me something crucial. That visibility is a choice. That we can choose to see people others overlook. That we can choose to value people others dismiss. That we can choose love over fear, connection over division, humanity over hierarchy. The foundation I've built exists because someone chose to see me, and now we choose to see others. Every woman who comes to us scared and alone. Every family seeking asylum. Every child who needs an advocate. We see them. We value them. We fight for them. She looked out at the crowd. 25 years ago, I was given an impossible order that changed my life. My response was unexpected. Instead of running, I stayed. Instead of accepting what was offered, I demanded more. Instead of settling for survival, I fought for thriving. And that's what I want for everyone. Don't just survive.
Thrive.
Don't accept the bare minimum. Demand more. Don't let anyone make you invisible. Choose to be seen. The standing ovation was thunderous. After the ceremony, as they drove home, Minho held her hand. Impossible order, huh? Is that what we're calling it now? Would you prefer I tell them you propositioned me while your mistress watched?
God, no.
Let's stick with impossible order. You never did tell me what happened to her. Your mistress. She married a Kibo heir and is very happy, last I heard. Turns out she wanted money and status, not me specifically. Smart woman. The smartest woman I know is sitting next to me. Flattery will get you nowhere. It got me you. No, Zuri corrected. Truth got you me. You were honest about who you were, about what you wanted, about what loving you would cost. She squeezed his hand, and I chose it anyway. Best choice you ever made? Second best. The first was not running that day. Staying when every instinct told me to leave. Looking at you and seeing past the fear to the man underneath. Minho brought her hand to his lips. I would have chased you if you'd run. I know. That's why I stayed. Figured I'd save us both the trouble. That night, with their children all home, Amara visiting from university, the others still living with them, the family gathered for dinner. It was chaotic as always. Everyone talking over each other. Multiple languages flowing freely. Laughter and arguments and love filling every corner of the house. Zuri watched them all and felt her heart swell to impossible size. This was what they'd built. Not just a family, but a legacy. Not just a life, but a testament to what was possible when two people chose each other against all odds. After dinner, she found Minho on their bedroom balcony, looking out at Seoul's skyline. What are you thinking about? She asked, wrapping her arms around him from behind. That day. The one that started everything. You think about it a lot. Because it's the day my life actually began. He turned to face her. Everything before you was just existing. Building power. Accumulating wealth. Surviving. But not living. Not really. And after? After was everything.
Love.
Family.
Purpose.
Meaning. You gave me all of that. We gave each other that. We did. He cupped her face. 25 years. And I love you more now than I did then. More than yesterday. More than this morning. How is that possible? Because we keep choosing each other. Keep building together. Keep growing. Promise me something. Anything. Promise me 25 more years. And then 25 after that. And however many more we get after that. Promise me forever. I promise, Zuri said. Forever. No matter what comes. No matter what challenges we face. Forever. He kissed her, and even after 25 years, it still felt like coming home. Like finding the missing piece of herself she hadn't known was lost. Like everything she'd ever survived had been worth it to get to this moment, this man, this life. They'd started with an impossible order and an unexpected response. They'd built everything else through choice, through courage, through refusing to accept that their story was impossible. And they'd proven that sometimes the most dangerous command leads to the most beautiful life. That sometimes the person who seems wrong is actually perfect. That sometimes staying when you should run is the bravest thing you can do. That sometimes love isn't safe or simple or sensible, but it's always, always worth fighting for. Min Ho and Zuri Kong had fought. They'd survived. They'd thrived. And they'd built a love story that started in darkness and emerged into glorious, impossible, perfect light. 25 years after that first encounter, they stood together on their balcony and looked at the life they'd built. The empire of love and family and purpose. The legacy that would outlive them both. Do you ever regret it? Min Ho asked. Staying? Choosing this? Choosing me? Zuri looked at this man who'd seen her when she was invisible, who'd loved her when she was scared, who'd built a life with her that defied every expectation and exceeded every dream. Not for a single second, she said. You, never. Not once. Not ever. He pulled her close. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. The only thing that matters. My wife. My partner. My everything. Forever? Zuri asked. Forever, Min Ho promised. And then some. And as souls sparkled below them, and their family laughed inside, and their future stretched out before them in all its messy, complicated, beautiful possibility, they held each other tight. Two people who'd found each other in the most impossible way. Two people who'd chosen each other against all odds. Two people who'd built forever from a single moment of courage. Their story had started with 5 words, remove your clothes and join us. But it was Zuri's response that changed everything. Not the words she'd spoken, but the choice she'd made in that moment and every moment after.
To stay.
To fight. To love. To build something impossible and make it real. And 30 years later, when their children asked how they'd fallen in love, Min Ho would smile and say, your mother told me no. And Zuri would add, and he listened. Because that's where it really started. Not with commands or submission, but with respect. With seeing each other. With choosing each other freely and completely. From that first impossible moment to this one, and every one that came after. Forever. No matter what. Always choosing each other. Always building together. Always loving through everything.
The end.